It's the one metric everyone, including probably your boss, loves, and using it can lead to a real disaster. What's the metric? The metric is cost to process an invoice. Make sure you stick around until the end when we share 2 reasons why this metric makes no sense. Hi guys, I'm Mary Schaefer, founder of AP Now, the place where we address all issues related to the accounts payable and payments function. So let's start off with why I think you shouldn't be using a cost to process an invoice, the metric for that. And the reason number one is I don't think most people know what it is in their own organization. So when you compare your cost to process an invoice to published statistics, you're going to come out looking bad. How do I know? We were doing a survey at one point at AP Now, and we were going over the questions that we were going to have in the survey, and the issue of cost to process an invoice came up. And the researcher on the project suggested we put it in, and I didn't want to put it in for the reasons we're discussing here. And I said, most people don't know it. She said, well, why don't we just require that everybody answer it, and that way they'll have to put it in. And I said, the problem with that is that if you require that they put it in, they will, but people will guess. And since they don't know what their number is, guessing is not really a good idea, not the metric we want to produce. So I said, we can put it in, but we'll give people the option of not responding to the question. We'll say, don't know, not available, something like that. And so, okay. So we sent the survey out, and when we got the responses back, 97% of the people who responded to the survey, which was several hundred professionals, responded that they did not know what the cost to process the invoice was. So needless to say, we didn't get enough information to process that, but it reinforced my belief that people don't really know what their cost to process an invoice is. Okay. Reason number 2, when people guess, not only do they guess, which is bad enough, but they want to look good, so they share an underestimate of what the number is. And let me share another story with you that I think kind of backs me up on this. I was having this discussion with an accounts payable director at one point, and she said, oh, we calculate our number. And she said, and when I calculate it, she said it comes out to, I think she said $15 an invoice. She said, but when I report it, I report $12 an invoice. And I was like, well, why would you do that? I mean, I couldn't fathom why somebody would do that. And she said, oh, I don't want us to look bad. So she was putting in a lower number. And that's somebody who had an idea what her numbers were. And so my belief is that when people are guessing, which right off the bat is not good, they're guessing on the low side. Okay. Reason number 3, all invoices are not created equal. So think about 2 invoices, and I'm picking the extremes. I will grant you that. Invoice number 1 is for, let's say, a magazine subscription. And so it's got one line item, and it's a magazine subscription for one person. Or it might be a membership in a professional association. It's got one line item is the point I'm trying to make, and it's straightforward. There's no discussion on what the amount is, et cetera, et cetera. So compare that invoice with, let's say, somebody in a medical situation where they order medical supplies, and an invoice might cover cotton balls, gauze, needles, and all the other stuff that they use in a hospital, gauze of different levels, different qualities, different quantities, etc. And so an invoice from the medical supply company might have 30, 40, 100 different line items. How can you say that it's going to cost the same amount of money to process the invoice for the magazine subscription as it is the invoice from the medical supply company? Obviously, one's going to take a lot more time than the other, or at least I hope it's going to. Okay, so that's just the beginning. But before we get to the last 2 reasons why using this metric is a bad idea, I'd like to invite you to subscribe. It's free, completely private, and you can unsubscribe at any time. By ringing the bell next to the subscribe button, you'll be notified when we post new content. And by the way, if you're on YouTube, you don't need to have a YouTube account to subscribe. You can subscribe if you have a Gmail account. And as to what new content and when we post it, we post accounts payable related content on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m., we're posting our new Wordle videos. Okay, reason number 4. It's not really an apples to apples comparison, even if your invoices are exactly the same. So let's say that simple invoice for a subscription. One company may be located in a low cost area, and so the salaries are lower there. while somebody else might be in a big city and they may have to pay higher salaries. So salaries can be different. The companies can be using different levels of automation. One can be, 90% automated. The other can be 5% automated or not automated at all. So big difference in their costs there. And the companies can have different processes. Nobody processes invoices exactly the same way. Some might get no manual signatures, some might get 2 manual signatures, some might require a second set of eyes to review invoices over a certain dollar amount, etc. So lots of differences. So it's really hard to have that apples to apples comparison since we don't all do things the same way. And reason number 6, when you do compute the figure, different organizations include different things. So for example, some companies will include rent, some won't. And if you include the rent, then you go back to our regional differences depending upon if you're in a big city or in a more regional location. Some will include corporate overhead, some will include manager's time, some won't. Some will include the time to resolve disputes and the salary associated with that. When I was talking to my accounts payable director friend who was telling me that she always reported a lower figure, and I was going through all these things, she was like, oh, we don't include that. We include that, but not that. So really, you're talking about benchmarking against a figure that, to my mind, doesn't really mean much. So does this mean all benchmarking is bad and that I'm against it? Absolutely not. It just means that you should pick a better metric to benchmark against, or maybe just benchmark against yourself. Understanding metrics and what's behind them is just one of the many issues professionals need to understand if they work in, manage, or have responsibility for the accounts payable function. There are many others, and we discussed them in episode 115. There's a link to that in the show notes below, and on YouTube, a link will appear momentarily to the left. And as always, we appreciate those comments, those thumbs up, those subscribes, and those shares. So good luck, everybody.